Teni sat on that velvet sofa, scrolling through Instagram with a bitter taste in her mouth. Every time she saw a woman posting a surprise engagement with a luxury ring, her stomach tightened. She looked at her best friend, Amaka, who was sitting across from her. Amaka was beautiful, smart, and had a good job. But she had recently mentioned that she was finally ready to settle down and find a husband. That was the problem for Teni. She could not stand the thought of Amaka marrying a man who was more successful than her own boyfriend.
Amaka, since you said you are ready for marriage, I have someone for you.
Teni said, her voice sweet like poisoned honey. His name is Ikenna. Amaka looked up, her eyes bright with genuine interest. Teni continued, he is a very humble man. He doesn't have much. He drives an old smoky car and lives in a small apartment in a very loud part of town, but he is God-fearing. Teni watched Amaka's face closely, hoping to see a look of disgust. Instead, Amaka remained calm. Teni leaned in and whispered,
Don't look for a finished product, my dear. A wise woman builds her house from the ground up. If you marry a rich man now, he will think he owns you. But with a poor man like Ikenna, you can grow together from nothing.
Teni went home that night smiling. She felt she had successfully trapped her friend in a life of endless starting small. A week later, the first meeting happened at a small, dusty restaurant. Teni had described Ikenna as a hustler who barely made ends meet, so she wasn't surprised when he arrived. He showed up in a plain, unbranded t-shirt and worn-out jeans, driving a car that sounded like a tired generator. Teni almost laughed out loud when she saw them together. Amaka looked so elegant in her simple office way, while Ikenna looked like a man who struggled to buy a bag of rice. Ikenna is a very hard-working man, Teni told Amaka, making sure to emphasize how hard his life was. He does many small jobs just to survive. He is not like those flashy Lagos boys who waste money on designer clothes. Ikenna stayed quiet, watching both women with very calm, intelligent eyes. He thanked Teni for the introduction and spoke to Amaka with deep respect. To Teni's surprise, Amaka seemed to enjoy his company immediately. She didn't seem to mind the old car or his simple appearance at all. When Teni got home, she looked at herself in the mirror and laughed. She imagined Amaka's future, living in a house with a leaking roof, wearing cheap fabrics, and always complaining about the price of onions.
You wanted to settle down, Amaka? Now you will settle down in the trenches.
Teni mocked. She felt powerful, like a queen who had just downgraded a rival. She had no idea that Ikenna was observing her every move, and he had noticed the wicked spark in her eyes every time he mentioned poverty. Teni remembered the day she first met Ikenna. It was 6 months ago at a crowded bus stop when her car had broken down. He had pulled over in that same noisy, battered Corolla and offered her a ride. During the drive, Ikenna had been polite and charming. Before she dropped off, he had gathered the courage to ask for her number, hinting that he would like to get to know her better. Teni had looked at his faded dashboard and the manual windows of the car and scoffed inwardly. I would rather have your own number, but I'm not promising to call. I am in a very serious relationship with a man who can actually maintain a car, Teni had said, her voice dripping with pride. She sized him up, saying only a man who struggled to buy fuel. She didn't even give him a chance to speak further. To her, Ikenna was a low-level man, far below the luxury lifestyle she dreamed of with her current boyfriend, Mike. She dismissed him completely, forgetting his face, until the moment she decided Amaka needed to be humbled. She called him and said, I have a friend who is perfect for a man of your humble status. She is not picky like me. Ikenna had simply nodded, his expression unreadable. Teni felt she was doing him a favor by giving him a woman like Amaka. She was convinced that by pairing her rejected man with her best friend, she was keeping Amaka firmly in second place. The plan was working perfectly. Amaka and Ikenna started spending more time together. Amaka would tell Teni how they went for walks in the park because Ikenna couldn't afford fancy cinemas. Teni would hide her smile behind her hand and say, Oh, Amaka, you are such a supportive woman. Most girls would have left him by now. You are a saint. In reality, Teni was checking her calendar, counting down the days until Amaka would be stuck in a miserable, low-budget marriage while Teni continued to hunt for billionaires. The weeks passed, and Amaka seemed more at peace than Teni had ever seen her. Every time they met for lunch, Amaka would glow while talking about Ikenna. "Teni, he is so brilliant," Amaka said one afternoon, sipping her water. "He speaks about economics and global markets like he owns them. He told me that wealth is a mindset, not just what is in your pocket." Teni rolled her eyes so hard they almost hurt. She thought Amaka was simply brainwashed by a man who had nothing else to offer but long grammar and cheap dreams.
Brilliance doesn't pay for a flat in Ikoyi, Amaka. I hope his mindset can buy you a diamond ring when the time comes.
Teni was starting to get annoyed that Amaka wasn't complaining. She wanted to hear about how the old car broke down in the rain or how they shared one plate of rice to save money. To stir the pot, Teni decided to visit Ikenna's one-room apartment. She wanted to see the poverty with her own eyes so she could describe it vividly to their other friends. She followed the address he had given Amaka, deep into a congested part of the mainland where the gutters were open and the air smelled of charcoal smoke. She stood in front of a rusty gate, adjusting her expensive sunglasses, feeling a wicked surge of satisfaction. "Yes," she whispered to herself, "this is exactly where Amaka belongs." Teni knocked on the gate, expecting a weary landlord to answer. Instead, a young man in a clean security uniform opened a small side door.
"Yes."
I need to see Ikenna.
Teni said, covering her nose with a silk handkerchief. The security guard looked at her strangely, but pointed towards a small detached building at the back of the compound. As Teni walked in, she saw Ikenna sitting on a plastic chair outside, reading a thick book. The place was neat, but very humble. There was no air conditioner, only a small standing fan humming loudly inside the open door. "Ah, Teni, what a surprise," Ikenna said, standing up. He didn't look embarrassed at all. He offered her the plastic chair, but Teni refused to sit. "I was just passing by," she lied, her eyes scanning the small space. She saw a single bed, a small table, and a pile of old newspapers. "Amaka told me you were settling in. I just wanted to see if you needed help." She said help with a tone that meant charity. Ikenna smiled, a calm and knowing smile that made Teni feel strangely uncomfortable. "I have everything I need for now," he replied quietly. Just then, his phone buzzed on the table. Teni caught a glimpse of the screen. It wasn't a cheap phone. It was a customized device with a logo she didn't recognize, flashing a notification that looked like a stock market alert with several zeros. Before she could look closer, Ikenna flipped the phone over. Teni could not stop thinking about that phone screen. Those zeros haunted her sleep. It must have been a calculator, she told herself the next morning, applying a thick layer of foundation. Or maybe he's playing a betting game. Yes, that's it. He's a gambler. She felt better after she convinced herself that Ikenna was just another broke man chasing quick money. To make sure Amaka stayed grounded in their struggle, Teni invited her for a luxury spa day. She wanted Amaka to feel the sting of what she couldn't afford once she married her poor boyfriend. As they lay on the massage tables, Teni started her psychological work. "Amaka, I saw Ikenna's place yesterday. It's cozy, very small but cozy." She sighed heavily, acting like she was mourning a tragedy. "I just worry about you. You are used to having a generator at night and a paved road. Are you sure you can survive in that compound? The gutters are quite deep." Amaka didn't look bothered. She reached out and squeezed Teni's hand.
Teni, Ikenna told me that a house is just a building, but a home is made of peace. He said we won't be there forever.
Teni bit her lip to keep from screaming. She hated Amaka's calm. She wanted Amaka to be scared, to be anxious, to be as miserable as the destiny Teni had written for her. A few days later, the cracks began to widen. Teni was at an upscale supermarket in Victoria Island, buying imported wine she couldn't really afford. As she walked toward the exit, she saw a black SUV with tinted windows parked near the curb. The door opened and a man in a sharp, expensive suit stepped out. He looked like a high-level executive or a government official. Teni froze when she saw who was standing by the car, waiting for the man. It was Ikenna. But he wasn't wearing his faded t-shirt. He was wearing a simple but clearly high-quality linen outfit. Teni hid behind a pillar, her heart racing. She watched as the man in the suit bowed slightly, actually bowed, and handed Ikenna a leather briefcase. They spoke for less than a minute. Ikenna looked different. His posture was commanding, and he wasn't smiling that humble smile anymore. He looked like someone who gave orders, not someone who took them. As the SUV pulled away, Ikenna turned and walked toward a different car. Not his noisy Corolla, but a sleek, matte black vehicle that looked like it cost more than Teni's entire life savings. Teni rubbed her eyes, certain she was hallucinating from the heat. "No," she whispered, her hand shaking. "It can't be. He is supposed to be broke. I made sure of it."
Teni did not sleep that night. Her mind was a battlefield of confusion and rage. She kept seeing that man in the suit bowing to Ikenna. "It must be a mistake," she hissed, pacing her bedroom floor. "Maybe he is a driver for a big man. Yes, he was probably just delivering a message." But deep down, a cold fear was beginning to grow. If Ikenna was actually wealthy, then her plan to keep Amaka beneath her had failed spectacularly. She couldn't let that happen. She decided she had to warn Amaka immediately, but she needed a new angle. The next morning, she rushed to Amaka's office during lunch. She didn't bring food, she brought fire. "Amaka, we need to talk. It's about Ikenna," Teni said, her face twisted into a mask of fake terror. Amaka looked up from her computer, concerned. "What happened? Is he okay?" Teni leaned over the desk, lowering her voice to a sharp whisper. "I saw him yesterday in Victoria Island. Amaka, he was with some very dangerous-looking men in tinted cars. He wasn't the humble Ikenna we know. He looked dark. Amaka, be careful. Men who pretend to be poor while hanging around big money are usually into something illegal. Have you checked if he's a ritualist?"
Amaka started to laugh, which only made Teni's blood boil. "Ritualist? Teni, you are watching too many movies," Amaka said, shaking her head. "Ikenna told me he has some wealthy clients he consults for. He is a brilliant strategist. It's normal for him to meet important people." Teni gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles turning white. "Clients? In a tinted SUV? Amaka, don't be naive. Why does he live in a face-me-I-face-you apartment if he has wealthy clients? It's a cover. He is hiding something. Maybe he is a Yahoo boy or he deals in human parts. Why else would he hide his true face from you?" Teni could see a small seed of doubt finally flickering in Amaka's eyes. She pushed harder. "Think about it. He wanted a simple girl who wouldn't ask questions. He found you. I thought I was helping you, but now I'm scared I've handed you over to a monster." Amaka sat back, her smile fading. Teni felt a surge of triumph. If she couldn't keep Amaka poor, she would make her terrified. She would make sure Amaka broke off the relationship before the truth could come out. As Teni left the office, she pulled out her phone to call a local blogger she knew. If Amaka wouldn't listen, she would start a rumor that would ruin Ikenna's reputation forever. The date for the introduction was set, but Teni was working overtime to ensure it never happened. She spent her days sending Amaka anonymous links to news articles about hidden lives and mysterious wealth. She even went as far as hiring a local boy to follow Ikenna, but the boy returned terrified, saying Ikenna's slum apartment was now guarded by men who looked like undercover agents. Instead of seeing the truth, Teni's envy blinded her further. She convinced herself that Ikenna was a kingpin in a dangerous cartel. "Amaka, I am begging you as a sister," Teni pleaded over coffee. "Cancel this introduction. My pastor had a vision about a man with two faces. One face is a beggar, the other is a lion that eats people." Amaka looked tired. The constant warnings were starting to drain her. "Teni, if you are truly my friend, you will stand by me. Ikenna has explained everything. He said he was testing the world to find someone who loved him for his soul, not his pocket." Teni gave a loud, sarcastic laugh. "Testing the world. Who does he think he is? Solomon? Amaka, you are falling for his scammer script." The morning of the introduction arrived. Teni, dressed in her most expensive lace, determined to outshine the bride-to-be. She wanted everyone to see that even if Amaka was getting married, Teni was still the one with the real money. The ceremony was supposed to take place at Amaka's modest family compound. Teni arrived early, expecting to see Ikenna's old Corolla decorated with cheap ribbons and a few crates of soda. She had her camera ready to record the low-budget affair to mock it later on social media. However, When she turned the corner to Amaka Street, her jaw dropped. The entire road had been graded and cleared. Massive air-conditioned marquees stood where she expected plastic chairs. Professional security guards in black suits stood at every entrance, holding guest lists on tablets. "What is this?" Teni stammered, her heart hammering against her ribs. She saw caterers in high-end uniforms carrying trays of expensive champagne. Then, a motorcade of 6 identical black SUVs pulled up. The middle door opened and Ikenna stepped out. He wasn't wearing a faded t-shirt. He was dressed in a white agbada made of silk that shimmered under the sun, with a wristwatch that cost more than Teni's entire apartment building. Teni stood frozen by the entrance, her phone trembling in her hand. The broke man she had handpicked to ruin Amaka's life was being escorted by 4 bodyguards. She watched as Ikenna walked toward Amaka's father, who was waiting with a look of pure shock. Ikenna's father followed closely behind, a man Teni instantly recognized from the cover of business magazines. He was a billionaire industrialist, known for his silence and his massive wealth. The realization hit Teni like a physical blow. She hadn't trapped Amaka. She had accidentally handed her a golden ticket. "This is a mistake," Teni whispered, her voice cracking. She tried to push through the crowd to reach Amaka, who was dressed like a princess in a custom-made traditional outfit. Amaka looked radiant, her face glowing with a peace that money couldn't buy, though she now had plenty of it. When Amaka saw Teni, she didn't run to her with the usual excitement. She stood her ground, her eyes cool and observant. Teni grabbed her arm, her voice desperate. "Amaka, we have to leave. This is too much. He lied to you. A man who hides this kind of wealth is dangerous. He mocked you by living in that slough." Amaka gently but firmly pulled her arm away from Teni's grip. "He didn't mock me, Teni. He was looking for a friend, and I found a husband," Amaka said, her voice steady and loud enough for those nearby to hear. "He told me everything last night. He lived in that small room to see who would stand by him when the world saw him as nothing. And you, Teni, you are the one who introduced us." Amaka paused, a sad smile touching her lips. "I used to think you were my biggest supporter, but then I asked myself, why were you so happy when you thought he was poor, but so terrified when you found out he was successful?" Teni's face turned a bright, ugly red. The guests were starting to stare. "I was protecting you," Teni shouted, but it sounded hollow. "I told you he was a ritualist because I cared." Just then, Ikenna stepped forward, standing beside his bride. He looked down at Teni with the same calm eyes he had used in the one-room apartment. "You didn't care, Teni," Ikenna said quietly. "You chose me for her because you thought I was a step down. You wanted to watch her struggle from your balcony. You didn't realize that the man you rejected was the same man you tried to use to bury your friend." The ceremony continued with a level of luxury that the neighborhood had never seen. Moet flowed like water, and the sound of high-life music filled the air. But Teni was no longer part of the celebration. She found herself standing alone near the catering tent, watching people she used to look down on being served like royalty. Her plan had backfired so completely that she felt small, smaller than the poor Ikenna she had tried to mock. She realized that by trying to dim Amaka's light, she had only provided the darkness that made Amaka's new life shine even brighter. As the sun began to set, Teni walked out of the compound. Nobody called her back. Nobody asked her to stay for the after party. She looked at her phone and saw the viral photos already hitting the internet. "Billionaire heir finds love in the trenches." The comments were full of praise for the kind friend who introduced them. Teni deleted her social media apps and sat in her car, crying bitter tears of envy. She had tried to write a tragedy for her friend, but she ended up being the villain in a fairy tale she created herself. Amaka was gone, Ikenna was a king, and Teni was left with nothing but the dust of the road. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or kept you glued to the screen, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one. I'd love to know your favorite moment. Share this video with someone who loves good storytelling.
And of course, hit the like button if you enjoyed this journey. More emotional, romantic, and powerful stories are coming your way. Stay tuned and stay in love.